Marvel has assembled plenty of superhero teams with enormous expectations, but not every one of them lived up to the hype. Some debuted with star-studded rosters, major crossover events, and huge marketing campaigns that promised the next evolution of the Marvel Universe. For a while, they seemed impossible to ignore. Then the excitement disappeared. Whether it was weak storytelling, poor execution, or a lack of fan interest, these teams never became the game changers Marvel envisioned. They weren't forgotten experiments, they were heavily promoted disappointments, but where did everything go wrong? Here are 10 heavily hyped Marvel teams that completely flopped. At number 10 is Force Works. In 1994, Marvel ruthlessly canceled the West Coast Avengers to chase the extreme paramilitary trends popularized by Image Comics, relaunching the team as Force Works. Penned by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, the title received a massive promotional blitz, featuring fold-out foil covers and aggressive house ads. Positioned as a heavily armed, proactive strike force led by Iron Man, Marvel bet this would be their next blockbuster pillar. However, the momentum died instantly. Stripped of the powerful Avengers branding, the book struggled to justify its existence. Longtime readers rejected the transparent 90s edge, convoluted computer bases, and bizarre new characters like the alien entity Sentry. Once the initial gimmick covers wore off and the Iron Man animated series ended, sales suffered a catastrophic drop as fans abandoned the concept. Marvel abruptly pulled the plug at issue 22, quietly sweeping the failed corporate experiment under the rug and returning the core cast to legacy comic titles. At number 9 is all-new Inhumans. By 2015, Marvel Comics launched an aggressive publishing mandate to elevate the Inhumans into a primary franchise meant to replace the X-Men. Helmed by writers Charles Soule and James Asmus alongside artist Stefano Caselli, All New Inhumans debuted as a flagship title within this highly publicized initiative. Featuring Crystal leading a global mission to recruit new humans, it was explicitly engineered to be the equivalent of Uncanny X-Men, backed by heavy PR and variant covers. The problem? The series collided directly with intense fan resentment. Fans saw right past the heavy-handed editorial agenda to bury mutant titles, sparking intense fan resentment. The new cast failed to resonate, and the forced oppressed minority metaphor felt completely disconnected without decades of established history. Consequently, monthly circulation plummeted by the 5th installment. Barely a year in, executives were forced to abandon the massive Inhuman push and permanently shelve the characters to let mutants reclaim their rightful throne. At number 8 is Fallen Angels. In 2019, Jonathan Hickman's monumental House of X and Powers of X historically revitalized mutant continuity. The subsequent Dawn of X became the decade's most hyped publishing initiative, featuring Fallen Angels as one of its 6 core launch pillars. Written by Brian Edward Hill, with art by Simon Kudransky, and starring Psylocke, X-23, and Cable, it was heavily marketed as the Dark Assassin series of this era. But while its companion titles soared, this specific project crashed immediately. Critics and fans relentlessly panned the bizarre narrative pacing, out-of-character dialogue, and heavily stylized, murky artwork that clashed terribly with the sleek aesthetic of the overarching relaunch. Toxic word of mouth caused retailers to drastically slash pre-orders within the first month. Acting swiftly, executives mercifully killed the run after just 6 issues. To save face, it was retroactively rebranded as a mini-series, with its cast reassigned to hit books, leaving it as the sole blemish on an otherwise flawless era. And if you think one failed launch hurt Marvel, the next teams prove the company poured even bigger budgets, bigger marketing, and bigger expectations into projects that collapse just as fast. At number 7 is A-Force. Originating as a widely acclaimed tie-in during the sprawling 2015 Secret Wars crossover event, A-Force was quickly transitioned into a premium ongoing comic series the following year. Co-written by G. Willow Wilson, Marguerite Bennett, and later Kelly Thompson, this project was strongly championed as the premier all-female faction of Earth's mightiest heroes. Marvel provided top-tier print marketing and promoted the group as a permanent cornerstone of their unified universe. That transition out of an isolated sandbox proved disastrous. Thrust into standard continuity, the narrative engine completely stalled when forced to immediately intersect with the polarizing Civil War II storyline. This severe interruption prevented the squad from cementing a distinct identity. Deprived of its original novelty and suffering from sluggish pacing, buyer enthusiasm vanished entirely during the sophomore arc. The beloved roster quietly dissolved, proving that monumental crossover hype cannot sustain a regular title lacking a rock-solid foundational creative core. At number 6 is The Order. Following the groundbreaking success of the 2006 Civil War event, Marvel introduced The Initiative, a massive status quo shift promising a sanctioned superhero squad for every American state. The flagship vanguard of this bold publishing era was The Order, chronicling California's official defensive unit. Written by Matt Fraction alongside illustrator Barry Kitson, executives bet heavily on this localized, corporate-sponsored procedural populated by entirely new faces. The reality was, this ambitious experiment completely failed to connect with the target audience. Exhausted by relentless event bloat, readers felt absolutely zero emotional investment in a roster of obscure, celebrity-obsessed novices. Even with critical acclaim praising the witty dialogue, the direct market vehemently rejected a premise lacking recognizable marquee stars. Purchasing numbers sank drastically beginning with the second chapter. Concluding after just 10 issues when Matt Fraction chose to leave the book, the publisher scattered the cast into background cameos, abandoning the sprawling 50-state concept to re-centralize their heroic universe in New York City. At number 5 is Slingers. In 1998, the publisher struck gold with the Identity Crisis storyline, during which Peter Parker adopted 4 distinct masked personas to clear his name. Eager to capitalize on this phenomenon, executives introduced Slingers, bestowing those exact costumes upon an untested quartet of teenagers. Promoted fiercely as the next premier adolescent legacy squad, the launch included a highly coveted zero-issue distributed exclusively through Wizard magazine. There was just one fatal miscalculation that doomed the project. Audiences revered the outfits solely because Spider-Man wore them. Stripped of that iconic web-slinging anchor, buyers were stranded with unfamiliar, angsty youths they simply didn't care about. Struggling to balance gritty end-of-the-century aesthetics with coming-of-age melodrama, the title saw comic shops demand nosedive immediately following the debut. Lasting barely a year on the shelves, the squad disbanded into ultimate obscurity. Today, the crew serves as a textbook example of mistaking a cool visual gimmick for a viable intellectual property. At number 4 is Fantastic Force. During the mid-90s, editorial leadership attempted to mutate the classic Fantastic Four property into a sprawling, mutant-styled franchise. This mandated expansion birthed Fantastic Force, a spin-off starring an adult, time-displaced Franklin Richards, alongside Black Panther, Huntara, and Devlore. Accompanied by foil-embossed covers and dynamic advertisements, the corporate directive sought to inject an aggressive edge into Marvel's foundational family. In practice, the conceptual execution proved disastrously convoluted. Veteran purists loathed the radical aesthetic overhauls and confusing futuristic lore surrounding their beloved patriarch's son. Simultaneously, consumers seeking extreme action ignored this blatant imitator, sticking with established heavyweights. Bogged down by dense, unappealing world-building, casual participation hemorrhaged rapidly month over month. Limping to the finish line, the doomed series was finally euthanized. This commercial misstep proved that comics' premier explorers could not sustain a vast, interconnected imprint, prompting executives to completely abandon the grim spin-off model and eventually restore Franklin's recognizable, classic, childlike innocence forever. But now, we're entering Marvel's biggest publishing misfires. Books backed by huge editorial confidence that still crashed, despite starring some of the company's most recognizable heroes. At number 3 is Nightstalkers. To exploit the early 90s horror comic boom, leadership orchestrated the rise of the Midnight Suns, a vast, intensely marketed supernatural publishing initiative. Debuting in 1992, Nightstalkers served as this imprint's gritty, street-level anchor, uniting vampire hunters Blade, Frank Drake, and Hannibal King. The launch was aggressively pushed via a poly-bagged inaugural issue containing a mandatory poster immediately intersecting with Ghost Rider to establish a lethal magical corner. The catch? This foundation rested entirely upon the fragile, highly unsustainable 90s speculator bubble. Once fans ripped open their plastic packaging and initial crossover events concluded, buyers encountered a completely disjointed narrative lacking cohesive direction. As the industry's obsession with grim aesthetics rapidly evaporated, circulation plummeted from blockbuster highs to abysmal lows at record speed. Concluding at issue 18, the overarching Gothic imprint was entirely dissolved. Drake and King were seemingly killed off, definitively teaching creators that Blade functioned infinitely better, operating independently. At number 2 is Fearless Defenders. Amidst the sprawling 2013 Marvel Now initiative, executives attempted to diversify their portfolio by assembling a powerhouse all-female roster. Penned by Cullen Bunn, Fearless Defenders united Valkyrie and Misty Knight to spearhead a fresh incarnation of the classic squad. Marketed heavily across both digital platforms and print, the series was positioned to grant street-level brawlers and cosmic warriors a dedicated blockbuster. Surprisingly, despite earning widespread critical acclaim for fun, character-driven scripts, the title was swiftly swallowed by an incredibly congested retail environment. Market analysts noted that competing directly against high-profile relaunches, orchestrated by industry titans Jonathan Hickman and Brian Michael Bendis, meant the comic simply could not secure vital shelf space. Because the roster lacked undeniable A-list heavyweights like Storm or Captain Marvel, casual readership ignored the book, causing purchases to vanish after the opening arc. The bittersweet cancellation proved that excellent writing simply cannot overcome a lack of marquee character branding. At number 1 is The Champions. Seeking to capture the lucrative Californian demographic back in 1975, executives envisioned a monumental squad capable of rivaling their established Eastern Seaboard properties. Created by writer Tony Isabella and artist Don Heck, enter The Champions, an eclectic ensemble promoted as a definitive powerhouse amalgamation featuring Ghost Rider, Hercules, Black Widow, Angel, and Iceman. Despite enormous fanfare championing this union of spies, mutants, deities, and hellfire demons, the foundational chemistry proved disastrously incoherent. There was absolutely zero logical justification for these wildly disparate individuals to collaborate. Consequently, the narrative suffered from painfully unnatural interactions alongside contrived scenarios. The publication rapidly cycled through frustrated writers and illustrators who found it impossible to balance a flaming skull beside an icy teen. Consumers thoroughly rejected this chaotic, unfocused, and completely bizarre assembly, causing commercial viability to severely plummet. When the dust finally settled, the disjointed crew retreated into their original mythologies, while the publisher embarrassingly forfeited the brand trademark rights for many decades. These teams never lived up to the hype. Comment the biggest flop, press the subscribe button now, and turn on notifications for more Marvel content.